Imagine standing under a flickering street lamp in this city of just endless rain. You hear a lonely saxophone wailing from some basement jazz club. You're a cynical private eye in a trench coat, and you know these streets are full of lies.
Right.
But what if the city itself is the lie? I mean, what if the rain, the jazz, the pavement, and even you are just a cosmic illusion?
It's a wild premise.
It really is. Today, we are pulling from a fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive. We're looking at a brilliant modern fiction novel called Noir Vedanta by Max and Claude, alongside some author interviews and commentaries on the ancient Upanishads.
Yeah, the source material is just incredibly rich.
And our mission today really is to understand how the gritty, hard-boiled detective tropes secretly map perfectly onto ancient Eastern philosophy. So, okay, let's unpack this.
To really grasp the magnitude of what these authors are doing, we have to look at the foundational premise of Advaita Vedanta, which is this ancient Indian philosophy of non-dualism. Our sources outline two fundamental layers of reality. So first, there is Māyā, which is the cosmic illusion.
And that's basically everything, right?
Exactly. It's everything you can see, touch, measure. It's the appearance of multiplicity, separate things, separate events, the whole passage of time.
The physical world.
Yeah, the physical world. But beneath that grand, incredibly convincing illusion, the only true ultimate reality is Brahman.
Okay.
And Brahman is the absolute. It's pure, undifferentiated consciousness. It has no edges, no beginning, and no end.
And reading through the author interviews, it's actually amazing how naturally the noir genre just absorbs that whole metaphysical weight.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, I mean, noir is, at its core, about a detective stripping away beautiful lies to uncover a hidden and usually horrifying truth.
Right, the rotten core.
Yeah, exactly. The world presents this shiny facade, and the detective's job is to find the rot underneath.
But in this specific universe, and this is what's so clever, the authors invert that trope entirely.
They really do.
The hidden truth beneath the beautiful, gritty lie of the city isn't a corrupt politician or some stolen artifact. The hidden truth is the absolute itself.
Wow.
So the classic noir act of uncovering deception becomes a literal, localized metaphysical practice. The detective isn't looking for a criminal. He is looking for the fundamental nature of reality.
Which introduces us to our protagonist, this detective named Neti Neti.
Such a great name.
Right. The name itself is the traditional Advaita method of inquiry, meaning not this, not this.
Yes.
It's the active practice of negating everything that isn't the absolute until only the truth remains. And we find him sitting in his office in the Subda building.
And Subda, for context, translates to sound or word, which the commentaries we looked at note is a direct nod to the universe beginning as a primordial vibration.
I love those little details. So he's at his desk, and he's drinking a bourbon called Old Vedic, which the book describes as tasting like oak, smoke, and the inside of an unanswered question.
That is just, it's such a brilliant line.
It really is. It's such a rich atmospheric detail, but it also establishes that even his vices are tied to philosophical inquiry.
Yeah, he is entirely embedded in the illusion, just going through the daily motions of a hard-boiled private eye. That is, until his inciting incident walks through the frosted glass door.
Of course, the classic trope.
Exactly. A woman in a red dress. Her name is Māyā.
Naturally.
Right. And in the philosophical texts, Māyā isn't just a concept. She is personified as the goddess of illusion, the literal architect of the physical world.
Right.
And she hires Neti Neti to find her missing husband, Brahman.
I remember reading that premise and literally having to put the book down for a second.
It's a lot to take in.
Wait, so she wants to find the absolute. That's like a fish hiring a private eye to find water.
That's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, how do you investigate a missing person who is literally everywhere? If Brahman is the underlying reality of the paper the case file is even printed on, how do you even begin a search?
And Neti Neti brings up that exact logistical nightmare in the story. You can't search everywhere because, well, everywhere never runs out.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is how the commentaries on the text point out a much deeper mechanism driving Māyā's request. She doesn't actually want the husband found.
Which sounds crazy for a detective story.
It does, but she wants the search.
My mind immediately tries to reject the idea of hiring a detective if you don't actually want the case solved.
Of course.
But looking at the Upanishadic commentaries provided in our source stack, it starts to make sense regarding the actual nature of pure consciousness.
Yeah, you have to think about the mechanics of pure, undifferentiated consciousness experiencing itself.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Without form, without a second thing to interact with, it's just infinite silence.
Like an empty room.
Yes, exactly. It's blissful, sure, but it is entirely empty of dynamic experience. The only way the absolute can experience itself as something tangible is through the illusion of separation.
Oh, wow.
It basically has to forget itself to find itself.
That's deep.
Right. The ache of the search, that specific longing for something you've lost, is the mechanism through which Brahman gets to delight in its own existence. So Māyā orchestrates the investigation because the investigation is the experience of life.
Okay, so if you can't look for the absolute everywhere, you are forced to look for where the absolute has been violently exposed.
Exactly.
You have to look for anomalies in the illusion. And in a noir city, that means stepping out of your office, going down into the rain, and looking for a body in an alley.
The quintessential noir moment.
Yeah. Neti heads to an alley behind Carmichael's jazz club and finds a body lying there in a charcoal gray suit. But our sources describe a scene that completely defies physical logic.
Yeah, it's not a normal crime scene at all.
Not at all. The body has no wounds, no trauma whatsoever, and its face is described as a prior face.
A prior face.
Yeah, it looks like the template from which all human features are derived, somehow predating time itself. It completely lacks the specific asymmetry of a lived individual life.
It is a face that is completely complete.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, in the context of the philosophy, an individual's face is carved by time, by trauma, by specific experiences, and all those things are elements of Māyā.
The illusion.
Right.
Yep.
To find a body with a prior face means you're looking at a form that hasn't been subjected to the illusion of time at all.
But if there's no blood, no struggle, and the body literally predates time itself, is this even a murder? I mean, what exactly happened to this guy?
It's almost like the victim wasn't killed, but unmade.
Right. How do you investigate a scene where reality itself has just been deleted?
Well, Neti Neti consults an informant named Sakshan, which translates to the witness.
The guy with the weird eyes.
Yes. The book gives Sakshan inverted eyes, eyes that act as an aperture for consciousness looking out, rather than organs taking light from the world in.
Creepy, but cool.
Very. And Sakshan explained the mechanics of what has actually happened. These bodies aren't murder victims, they are residues.
Residue.
Yes, someone in the city is forcefully performing the Neti Neti method, but not as an internal meditation. They're using it as an aggressive physical act on the external world.
So they are aggressively stripping away the costumes of the world from the outside in.
Exactly. They are ripping the illusion of Māyā away from specific geographic locations.
Just tearing it right off.
Yes. And when you violently delete the illusion of a person or a space, what is left behind is a physical trace of the absolute that was supporting it in the first place.
And that's the body.
That's the body. It's the stark, unvarnished form Brahman leaves behind when the costume of the world is violently peeled off.
Man, that completely reframes the bizarre clues Neti Neti finds on this residue.
Oh, the clues are fascinating.
Yeah, he searches the pockets and he finds an iron key that is inexplicably warm, which suggests the metaphysical unmaking just happened.
Right, it's fresh.
He also finds a hand-drawn map with Sanskrit street names, like Sat for being and Chit for consciousness.
Important details there.
Very. But the most compelling clue is this heavy blank business card. On one side, it just says Tatvamasi.
And that is a huge philosophical tell.
Unpack that for us.
So Tatvamasi is one of the Mahavakas, or the great sayings of the Upanishads. It translates to, that art thou, or you are the absolute.
Okay.
It is the ultimate declaration that the individual self and the universal reality are one and the same. So leaving that card isn't just a taunt for the detective. It's a massive theological statement. The killer is signaling a deep, terrifying comprehension of the mechanics of reality.
Which turns a localized metaphysical anomaly into a patterned conspiracy. I mean, a map implies a destination, right? And multiple targets imply a systemic goal.
The stakes go way up.
They really do. The investigation scales up immediately. Neti Neti brings these clues to two crucial characters. Tanvi, who is a mathematician specializing in sacred geometry, and Vikram, this ancient bartender who keeps a meticulous ledger of the city's happenings.
Such classic noir archetypes, but with that spiritual twist.
Exactly. And Vikram's ledger reveals there are actually 6 of these residue bodies in total. When Tanvi maps their locations, they form a yantra.
And we really have to understand how a yantra functions in this context.
It's not just a cool drawing.
Far from it. In Vedic geometry, a yantra isn't just a symbolic drawing. It is considered an actual schematic of consciousness. It's a localized focal point meant to bend the metaphysical gravity of a space.
Right.
Tanvi points out that this specific geometry they're dealing with isn't designed for meditation or protection. It is essentially a metaphysical circuit board designed for extraction.
It extracts the underlying reality of the city.
Yes.
The bartender's ledger tracks these invisible thefts perfectly, and it's not about stealing money or physical objects.
No, it's way more subtle than that.
Yeah, like an ancient temple in the Brahmpeth district suddenly loses its spiritual turn-toward feeling, or a specific stretch of the waterfront completely loses its feeling of luck that had drawn fishermen there for decades.
The vibe is just gone.
Right. The physical buildings, the stone, the water, they all still there. But the saturation of the absolute has been drained. So the killer is basically a metaphysical vacuum cleaner.
A metaphysical vacuum cleaner, that's exactly it.
He's draining the vibe out of the city to fuel his own spiritual enlightenment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really explains the antagonist's motive.
Okay, tell us about the killer.
In Vedantic terms, reality is often described as Satchitananda being, consciousness, and bliss.
Satchit Ananda.
Right. The physical matter, the sat, remains. But the ananda, the bliss, that localized saturation that gives a place its unique soul or resonance, is being siphoned away through this geometric circuit.
And it makes me think about Neti's method of not this, not this. It's like trying to sculpt an elephant out of stone. You don't build the elephant, you patiently chip away all the marble that isn't the elephant.
That's a great analogy.
But our killer is doing the exact opposite. He is trying to aggressively hoard the marble chips. He thinks if he collects enough pieces of the absolute, he can literally build enlightenment.
And that analogy cuts right to the heart of the antagonist's psychological state. His name is Kala, meaning time.
Kala.
Yeah. The author interviews delve deeply into Kala's backstory, portraying him as a former, deeply committed student of the Advaita tradition. He studied under a great teacher named Nirvan.
But something went wrong.
12 years ago, Nirvan died prematurely. And Kala got stuck in what the tradition calls avidya, or the gap.
The psychological gap between knowing the menu and actually tasting the food.
Yes, perfect way to say it.
He has all the intellectual framework, but he completely lacks the experiential realization.
He has done years of grueling internal work. He stripped away his peripheral attachments, but that final leap, the actual dissolution of the ego into unity, it just never happened.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. For 12 years, has been trapped in a spiritual purgatory, totally consumed by an agonizing hunger to know the absolute.
So his ego just takes over.
Exactly. The ego, desperate to survive, co-opts his spiritual journey. It convinces Kala that enlightenment isn't a state of letting go, but an object to be acquired.
Like a prize.
Right. He weaponizes the Neti Neti method to forcefully funnel the city's underlying reality into himself, treating spiritual awakening like a quantitative threshold he just needs to cross.
But since Kala is acting as a metaphysical vacuum, he has a finite amount of space before his physical form simply shatters under the weight of the absolute.
He's going to overload.
Yeah, Neti Neti knows Kala is on a ticking clock. Tanvi warns the detective that Kala is preparing to place the final point of the yantra at the intersection of the streets named being and consciousness.
The sat and the chit.
Exactly. If he completes that circuit, all the remaining saturation will violently channel right into him. The city will physically remain, but it will be an empty, soulless shell.
And Kala will be obliterated by the infinite.
Which forces Neti Neti into a confrontation where physical force is entirely useless. I mean, you can't punch enlightenment out of someone.
No, you really can't.
So he tracks Kala down to the old atmospheric rooms of Kala's dead teacher, Nirvan, right at dusk. And the text describes Kala as hauntingly thin, dressed in gray, with a face that has become a terrifying aperture of pure hunger.
He is a man pushed to the absolute brink of sanity by his own seeking.
Kala is bracing for a physical fight. He fully expects the detective to draw his revolver or try to dismantle the yantra by force. But here's where it gets really interesting.
That's my favorite part of the book.
Neti Neti doesn't pull a gun. He doesn't fight him at all. He uses a philosophical insight he uncovered from the dead teacher's notes.
Yes.
He looks at this man who has been consumed by 12 years of agonizing lack and delivers a single devastating line. The gap is the this.
The gap is the this. It is the philosophical linchpin of the entire novel.
We definitely need to unpack the mechanism of why this specific phrase stops Kala in his tracks.
Okay, so Kala believes his hunger, his desperation, and his suffering are obstacles.
Yeah.
He believes they are the gap separating him from Brahman.
They are the things in the way.
Right. But by saying the gap is the this, Neti Neti forces Kala to realize that the seeking energy itself is the very consciousness he is looking for.
Oh, wow. So the hunger isn't keeping him from the absolute. The hunger is the absolute experiencing itself as hunger.
Exactly. By searching aggressively outside of himself, by destroying the city to hoard its residents, Kala was ignoring the very clue he left on his own victims. Tatvamasi.
You are the absolute.
Yes, the realization that the seeker is the sought completely short-circuits Kala's ego. The ego thrives on the distance between me and what I want.
The distance.
Yeah, when you realize that the awareness experiencing the lack is made of the exact same substance as the ultimate reality, the distance just collapses. The illusion of separation breaks mechanically.
And you can literally feel Kala's worldview shatter in that moment on the page. The 12-year hunger doesn't get satisfied, it just vanishes.
Dissolves.
Yeah, it dissolves because he finally sees that he already is what he's been trying to steal. The extraction stops. Kala agrees to reverse the process, sitting down to slowly release all that stolen saturation back through the yantra.
Letting the metaphysical vibe seep back into the ancient stone temples, the rain-slicked streets, and those basement jazz clubs.
The city's soul returns.
It's a profound resolution. The detective doesn't solve the case by arresting the culprit or shooting him.
Right.
He solves it by clearing away the final, blinding lie the culprit was telling himself. The noir genre's demand for truth is fulfilled entirely through a metaphysical awakening.
As we wrap this up, let's bring this narrative directly out of the fiction and into your life listening right now. You might be wondering why a metaphysical noir story matters to a curious learner.
It's a fair question.
It matters because it is incredibly easy to fall into Kala's trap. As someone who seeks to understand the world, you can trick yourself into believing that if you just accumulate enough knowledge, if you extract one more brilliant insight from a book or a conversation, you will finally cross some imaginary finish line.
That you'll finally be complete.
Exactly.
And this raises an important question, when does the pursuit of knowledge become the very barrier to actual understanding?
Oh, that's good.
Kala had all the information. He knew the ancient texts. He understood the sacred geometry. He even knew the phrase tatvamasi. But knowledge is entirely hollow until you realize it applies directly to the awareness you're experiencing right now.
It has to be experiential.
Right. Truth isn't an external object you can aggressively hoard. It is simply what remains when you stop clinging to your own illusions of separation.
We've spent this entire deep dive looking at a fictional detective solving a cosmic crime in a city of rain and jazz. But here's something to mull over that we haven't touched on yet, something for you to take into your real life today. Look at our modern obsession with optimizing ourselves. Look at the endless scrolling for the perfect life hack, the ultimate insight, or the ultimate wellness routine.
It's everywhere.
It is. Are we, right now, committing Kalola's crime? Are we trying to relentlessly consume and hoard the vibe of enlightenment through our screens, missing the fact that the very awareness doing the scrolling, the consciousness paying attention to this very sentence, is exactly what we were searching for?
The seeker is the sought.
Think about that the next time you feel the ache to search for something outside yourself. Remember the epilogue of the book? You were the detective the whole time. The reading was the investigation.
Oh.
So what costume are you wearing right now? And who are you really underneath it all?